This is a portal connecting our reality with alternate space-time continua.
Correct.
You know, I'm a 45-year-old space nerd.
Galactic Coast Power Hour.
Your things look hot.
Power Hour.
There is a space age quality to them. They're all we can afford.
We think right here is the way to go.
You know, free.
Galactic Coast Power Hour.
Welcome to the Galactic Coast Power Hour with John Innes and Mighty Mike Taylor, the Galactic Guys.
Each and every one of us is a crew member here on Spaceship Earth.
On Final Draft Radio.
We are excited and honored to have tonight's guest here in studio. His titles have included Aerospace Engineer, Astronaut, Aquanaut, Author, and the Pride of Ashland, Nebraska. I never pass up a chance on some alliteration. He has gone by call signs such as Slice and Huskbow, but we will refer to him as Mr. Clayton Anderson. Thank you very much for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, awesome. No, we're so pumped to have you. I know you're a very busy fellow in the middle of a book tour right now, as you have a new book that just recently came out.
Yep. It's called A is for Astronaut, Blasting Through the Alphabet. It's my first children's book. The illustrator, Scott Brundage, he's absolutely out of this world. And you can get it anywhere. It's doing really well, and we're very excited. We hope that it will do very big things.
No, it is doing very well. I took my 4-year-old son to a book signing you had over at Barnes & Noble, and they had already sold out by the time I got there. So,
you snooze, you lose.
Right. and it truly is a beautiful book. I mean, the combination of the illustrations and the writing, it's, you know, and I was telling Mr. Anderson before we started that, you know, my 4-year-old loves the illustrations, my 8-year-old loves reading it. But I mean, even I've got a lot out of it, and I'm a 45-year-old space nerd.
Well, writing things isn't unfamiliar to you. You're a musician, right? You write music, you write poetry, I would assume. I mean, I'm a fellow musician, so poetry and words and music just go hand in hand. So once you got a groove, you just...
Yeah, it seems, I agree with that. And,
almost like a song with the prose
right.
and the beat and the timbre.
And that was what the people at Sleeping Bear Press were so impressed with, I guess, that when they took my manuscript off the pile and started looking at it, it required, they said, the CEO said it required the least amount of editing of any manuscript they've ever received, which is kind of high praise.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, like,
great.
I don't know how I did it, but, you know, Nevada Barr, in my first book, she's a big New York Times best-selling murder mystery writer. And she's a friend of mine, and she coached me in the first book, and she would read my chapters, and she, you know, I got about halfway through, and it really stunk, and I quit reading it because I didn't want to read about that. I want to read about this.
It's tough doing your own stuff or editing your own stuff. It's
Don't make your sentences so long.
Yeah.
Quit using so many adjectives. Don't be the villain, be the hero. You know, she gave me really good advice, but she forced me to think about what I was writing, you know, and she was a huge asset for that first book. So it turned out, I think they both turned out really well, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
You know, talking about the Ordinary Spaceman, which, you know, I'm really enjoying. I'll admit I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through. But you know, and I think you've mentioned in some other interviews that you realized when you wrote this, there's a lot of other astronaut autobiographies out there. Mm-hmm. But just seems like a combination of your story, you know, I mean, which, you know, includes 14 rejections of trying to become an astronaut. Over
Everybody
15,
brings that up.
right?
Right.
You know, so you know, that, the lessons from the book, Never Give Up. But also what really separates yours is just, I really, you know, because I've actually read a few other astronaut autobiographies, you know, because I am, like I said, a 45-year-old space nerd. But is that I really feel like I'm really impressed with the storytelling. I mean, you really feel like you're there. You know, whether it be your first Zoom and Boom ride out of Ellington over the Gulf of Mexico, or, you know, your experience at the Star Space Facility outside of Moscow, getting measured in places you didn't know, you know, you had, and you know, and hoping those, you know, by an attractive Russian lady, and hoping those measurements didn't change during mid-measure. Yeah. You know, and then even you know, in things that are a little bit more emotional, like as a you know, an astronaut family escort during the last flight of the Columbia, actually being, you know, on the landing strip waiting for the Columbia to come, and you know, having to take the family away to a conference room and kind of go from there. I mean, you really, by reading this book, you really are feel like you're with you. Very obviously it's some funny and some very emotional. I mean, I'll acknowledge there's some crying going on.
Yeah.
I mean. But so I really think over the long haul of time, this is going to really stand out as an astronaut autobiography, and so I just want to state that for the record, and it's been stated. But,
thank you. The interesting part about that book is it covers the 15 years of my astronaut career essentially. I talked for one chapter about my childhood, and I talked for one other chapter about my first 15 years at NASA as an engineer. But the idea for that book has always been to entertain first, to educate a little bit, and to inspire. I didn't write that book to give a lesson, right? A lot of people said, well, you have to tell a lesson, you have to teach people something. Well, no, I don't.
That's what I got from A was the inspiration. I mean,
Right.
that's what made me think that the moon landing did something to you, because
Right.
you can totally see that you're trying to inspire children. And when you said that, it was the lady at the book signing who had drugged you into the roofies had dragged you into the children's section. But I always had the sense that you were trying to inspire kids the way that you were inspired. Mm-hmm. Growing up in Nebraska, kind of isolated, just a few miles from Memphis, Nebraska.
Yeah, Memphis Lake, you bet. The fishing hole.
I admire the story because you are so ordinary in your thing, but you're extraordinary in everything you've done, and including inspirations. But I get the feeling that the reason it took you so long is because you were Mr. Fix-It. You fixed everything. You were running around and taking care of things on missions, and they wanted you on the ground. Right? I mean, that's the feeling I get just from looking at your accolades.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about all that, but for me with the ground control team, it was a love-hate relationship. I think most of them hated me.
Probably because you were solving their problems before they had problems,
and I was pushing them to think differently. And I think the lesson I learned, and I learned it. I knew kind of going in that I was a vocal person. And I told him, we actually had a meeting, me and the entire control center team, as many of them as I could get in the room, with the lead flight director. And I told him, I said, look, when I get into space, don't listen to what I say and take it personally. Listen to what I say and hear the words. Don't look at me as yapping at you, and look at me as trying to fix something or change.
The ego. That's zero in the ego is what that is. And there's no time for niceties in some situations, and I agree with that. And that's
you'd think not, but I think most of them still took it personally. Right? They felt like I was doing something to affront their character, and I was only trying to make it better for the guys and gals that were coming behind me.
Absolutely.
And so there was some rough sailing when I was in orbit.
All right, so I'm looking at the countdown clock, and we may be going commercial break. No, we'll keep going. All right, excellent. So you wrote in the book that as Mike already alluded to, that at age 9 it was the Apollo 8, witnessing history that first planted the spacefaring seed in your soul, and. I've a lot of the space enthusiasts. We have we talk about what was the most the ballsiest launch in the history of space.
Mm-hmm.
I always go back and forth between Apollo 8 and STS-1. That was obviously the first test flight, although it was a manned test flight. But I've never had the opportunity to ask an astronaut what they think was the most ballsiest space launch of all time.
First one I was on was
pretty
ballsy.
I'd have felt like that might be the answer.
The second one would be the second one.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right,
then the third one would be the
taking yours out of the mix.
Okay.
You have a.
I mean,
obviously it's a tough question.
How was it on the pad? Right. I mean.
Well, I wanted to pee. That was the first priority. I was trying to pee while I laid on my back.
Wasn't that Gus that first broke that?
That was Alan
Shepard.
Alan Shepard.
Yeah.
That's why I wore a diaper. And, you have your shot at the 195 foot level to use the toilet for the last time, which I did.
Right.
And, of course, then you're freaking out because you got to undo your suit, right, to use the urinal. And then you got to put the suit back together by yourself. And, Lord help you if you miss something, do something wrong, right?
Because everybody else is like they're already gone.
Well, yeah, I could have asked for help, but there's certain things, we had the first crew, we didn't have any females on it, so it would have been easy. But these guys were all hard driving dudes and typical type A personalities. And, they wanted nothing to do with any of my issues, right? They wanted to be doing what they were doing. They wanted to be in their seat, strapped in, ready to go, focused on the mission. And
dude, I gotta pee.
yeah, so Clay wasn't going to go around and say, "Hey, can you help me zip up and snap this?" That wouldn't have gone over well. So I was pretty careful, and I made sure I did it right, and I got in there and strapped in. But even when you use the bathroom and you lay down on your back for a couple more hours, eventually you got to pee.
Yeah, it's gonna rest in your.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, thinking of the Platte River and the Missouri River and Niagara Falls.
Hearing waterfalls in your head.
Faucet. And I'm just about there, and then Commander C.J. Sturkow, he hits the intercom button. Clay, how you doing down there? God, dog. He totally broke my concentration. To pee, and then, of course, it didn't matter. About 10 minutes later, the rockets are lighting, and then you don't have to pee anymore.
Right.
Because everything's focused differently, right?
Yeah. So did time slow down for you during that?
No.
It didn't?
The first time, it was fast. Everything was fast.
Right?
It's
like performing when you're a musician. Everything goes so fast.
Well,
it's just...
and I was a basketball referee in college, right? So they talk about how the game slows down the more experience you get. Well, the first time I was in the shuttle, it was kind of a freak show for me because there's so much going on, and you're listening to all the chatter.
Sure.
And you're trying to make sure you don't mess up, because my biggest deal
everybody's counting on you.
I don't want to screw something up.
Yeah.
And so that's where my focus was. But then when the lights go off and everything's happening, you're just you can't think about anything. Yeah. All I could think about was my cue card and what I had to do. As soon as we got to 0G, I was going to take my helmet off and my gloves off, and I was going to clip them together and put them put my helmets in the glove and put my glove in the bag and all that stuff.
The training kicks in, and you're just So there's no time to really be in the moment on the first one, right?
I didn't think so. And I contrast that with my second flight 3 years later. And it was way more relaxed for me. I was on
we'll put the gloves together. We'll throw them in the thing. We'll put the helmet over here.
I knew what I was doing. I knew what was important. I could watch the rookies that were seated on either side of me, and I could laugh.
They're worried about their gloves.
Because,
they probably have to pee.
They probably have to pee.
It's funny.
Just go in your bladder, buddy.
It was totally different and extremely enjoyable. And then when I got to space, I was able to take charge, and do the things I knew I was responsible for and help everybody else. The first time it was like, holy crap, I'm in space. What do I do next?
Yeah.
I got to look at my cue card. Oh, it says do this, right? And I didn't have many jobs. My first flight, I was a bag of potatoes that was going to get delivered to the space station and thrown through the hatch, and they were going to leave me alone. But that meant I didn't have a lot of stuff to do, but Commander Sturkow was really good and gave me easy little things to do so I could feel like I was part of the deal.
You're relying on your peers, and
Right.
on the second one, you're the peer,
yes,
and they're relying on you. You're the old dog now.
And that was fun, man. I had more space flight experience than the whole crew added up together.
So you were more in the moment on the launch.
Yes.
On the second one.
Yes.
And you could really kind of try to perceive all the power that's down below you, and that must have...
And, it was so weird because I was so aware. The first thing I saw when we hit 0G was one of the dosimeters that was attached to one of the chairs in the shuttle to just measure the ambient radiation. It just starts floating across the room. So I just reach up, I grab it, and I put it in my pocket, right? No big deal. If the first flight, I probably wouldn't even have seen it.
What is that?
Yeah, it was crazy.
There's something in my peripheral.
Yeah.
I can respect that, man.
It was a great time. The second time, I really wanted to stay longer, especially when we were docked to the station. I could have stayed a whole month or two. I felt like I was home. and I knew the place, and I wanted to stay and work in the place, but of course I didn't get that opportunity. But then, as I thought about it later, a month and a half would have been all I needed to satisfy my curiosity again, or my appetite for space, right? Because then I realized by watching the other guys that within a month and a half I'd be doing the same stuff I was doing the last time, and it wouldn't be new anymore, it wouldn't be exciting anymore, it'd be work. And that's what motivated me to, okay, I get it, it's time to go home, and I understand. So that was a big revelation for me. I don't know that I could have gone back and done a 5 to 6 month
another long
increment. Yeah, because
Right.
I mean the tasks are the same. You do this. You're eating the same food. You're doing the same thing over and over again. It would have been work.
So the first one's pure stress. You're worried about everything, right? Yeah. And although this is like it had to have been your dream from 10 years old on.
Yep.
Or 9 years
9 years
old
old,
on.
yeah.
Here you are.
Longer-
now you're living your
longer-
dream, but you're too stressed out to enjoy it, right? So mission number 2, your old dog, and you're in the moment almost the entire time until it gets almost to mundane, right? To normalcy.
Yeah, we were we were in that mode where we'd done our spacewalks. We'd had a lot of success doing our spacewalks, and it was
38 hours, 38 and a half hours EVA.
Spacewalks, yeah.
And I'm
That's
a
pretty awesome,
a
man.
small time
I am
number.
super. I'm an electrician. I work with my hands. I'm super jealous. I would.
Okay, next time put on oven mitts and do it.
Right. Well, I've been working at Space Center Houston for the last 2 years. We did the Mars exhibit, and I was trying to talk him into hanging us from the ceiling while we were working on it, so it looked more realistic. He was like, "Then you'd have to wear gloves." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm out."
Yeah, it's hard to twist those wires together when you got gloves on.
Right.
Excellent.
Sure.
Well, I think we're about to take a commercial break here in a minute, so we're gonna keep
Awesome.
hydrating ourselves. And
We're live with Clayton Anderson, drinking beer.
he's had so many trips to Russia that in the book he even admitted he couldn't even document how many it was. He could not give it a number.
Nope, can't remember.
So I guess that's a good segue. That wasn't where I was going to go, but I went there. So how about Russia? The trips to Russia and experiences there. That was actually you had some really colorful stories. Like I referenced earlier. Just the whole process of the spacesuit, of the seat for the Soyuz, which was going to be you never had to utilize the Soyuz, correct? I mean,
actually, we did.
Oh, okay.
We had to move parking places. So late in our mission, we had to get in the Soyuz, get in our suits, get in the Soyuz, and undock from a Earth-facing port and fly around to the back end of the station and dock in the back because another Soyuz was coming up and needed that docking port.
Oh, wow.
So, it chapped some of my colleagues because when I sign a photo, I can sign Soyuz TMA 10. And one guy said, "You can't write that. You can't write that." And I go, "What do you mean I can't write that?"
That was a mission.
Said, "You didn't launch and land on a Soyuz." I said, "No, but we got in one and flew it around and moved the and he was so mad.
You're unattached.
Yeah.
In a Soyuz.
Heck
You're flying in a Soyuz.
We abandoned the space station for about 20 minutes.
Did y'all make a patch?
No,
not yet.
Yeah, today everybody makes a patch for everything, right? They got the Europeans, and they all got their personal patch and all that.
Yeah, but that's respectable. You were up in space. You detached from a space station and then reattached on. That's patch worthy.
Yeah, I think.
But we didn't get a patch.
I think tomorrow he's gonna be calling us patch guy.
Yeah. No, I don't have a patch guy.
Well, can I put
you need a patch guy.
I'm gonna slide you my card later.
Oh, there's a lot of patch guys out there.
Yeah, well, there's a young hungry guy right across from you that wants to get the patch game. No, but
there's guys fencing themselves as patch. I'm a patch guy,
dude. If you got assigned to a shuttle mission, there were people emailing you within 30 minutes wanting to do your patch. It was crazy.
My name is Guy Patch.
Hey, I can do patches on the side. You had a trench coat and he opened it up and said, "Check this out.
Check this patch
Just pick
out."
one." Yeah, making a patch is an exercise in itself.
That's true.
Yeah, and the beer club I came up in, the Bay Area Astronauts, they do every year. We do a lunar rendezvous out at the Bay Area Park, and I joined.
It's actually
it.
Clear Lake Park, the
Clear
Berry
Lake
Community
Park.
Center
Berry
at
Community
Clear Lake Park.
Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, mix the
Don't want
two
to send
up.
people the wrong way.
Right, where are they going? But they make a patch for each lunar rendezvous,
Yep.
and it's
And a really
always
cool
like a
t-shirt.
play on.
Yep.
But with like beer bottles and
Well, it's
and
always a
things
really,
like that.
because first of all, a lot of the astronauts, actually, the astronauts, they have a history in the space program that goes back a long
John
time.
Jurgensen.
Yeah. I mean, he goes back to the Apollo program. So they always do creative patches and T-shirts that always.
Yep.
I remember the one year that we didn't get a shuttle, but we got
We got the seat.
Yeah, we got, and on the logo it says we got seats.
No, it said, F them, we got the seat.
Right. Well, that was.
But it was
Yeah.
Hey, Gracie and Andy, if you're up, time to go to bed.
F star star star.
But
That's
yeah,
in my book, F star star star.
So also in your book, you reference the astronaut prayer, and I know you've been you've been out of this program for a little while now. But has there been any? When was the last time you had to recite the astronaut prayer?
Dear Lord, please don't let me F this up. I don't know that I ever actually recited it, although it was always in my mind. Like I said before, I didn't want to be the guy that messed something up, because if you mess something up, it can be a really bad trickle down. So
As far as you never going on another mission, right?
well, yeah,
Or
that's
you get a bad rep.
That's the ultimate trickle down, sure. But, first and foremost is you're in a dangerous place. So you don't want to be the guy that messes something up that causes somebody to get hurt.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's the ultimate consequence. Then you get into the point where there are a lot of little things you do on a space flight, and yeah, some of them matter more than others, but you didn't want to be that person that messed something up, because if the next person had to do something based on what you had a task you had performed and you didn't do it right or well,
I'm not going to pull a Clayton.
it made their job harder. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm pretty proud of the fact that I don't think I ever messed up anything.
Right.
That was of utter consequence. On the station, I was by myself most of the time on the United States segment, so I was responsible for everything there, and everything went well. And I don't think we messed anything up. Now maybe somebody will correct me tomorrow with a Twitter feed or a Facebook post, but I think for the most part we did okay.
Excellent.
Right.
In the book, that when you're here as a summer intern at JSC way back in the day, and that's mandatory reading. I mean, just the whole story of you traveling down here, and I mean, there's so many stories, but there's one that you're about to head off to graduate school, so you're leaving you're leaving JSC, and you decided and at this point you had not yet met an astronaut, and you could see yourself going back home, going to graduate school, and people asking you, did you meet astronauts? And of course at that point your answer would be no. So you kind of basically came up with a plan, and to actually kind of a almost scope out and try to
was a
ambush.
stalker. I
Yeah,
was a
you're
stalker.
basically going to ambush Richard Truly and Joe Engel from STS-2, and which you turned out to be successful. You actually referred to it that it was the greatest moment in your life at the time. I think it was Joe Engel was the one that spent more time with you. Didn't he fly SR-71s back in the day? Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah, really impressive guy. And that even cemented your dream of one day flying in space, even deeper into your soul. Now, fast forward many years later, and you're an astronaut, and there's interns and co-ops. Did you take that in consideration when interacting with people? I mean, that here you are, now you're it's like flip the tables. You're the one that they want to meet or get even a couple minutes of your time with.
Certainly, if I knew who they were, and I knew there were interns specifically, back then there were interns and then there were co-ops. Today they're still interns and co-ops, but they're all called the same thing. But if I knew who they were or they approached me, I always tried to be gracious and helpful and spend some time with them, and I still do. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking to the JSC co-ops and interns. I think it's next week. I'll be going over to Johnson to give them a briefing about life as an astronaut, and I really love it, because those kids, have starry eyes and they want to do great things, but I'm honest and open with them. Boy, I tell them the good and I tell them the bad, and they seem to appreciate that. You know, it's not all candy and soda pop when you want to be an astronaut and when you become an astronaut. So I figure honesty is the best policy.
Speaking of the good and bad, right? Being an electrician, there's circumstances where we're into, you know, a fatal territory.
Oh yeah.
You know, like you guys are in it 24/7 when you're up there, right? Because just like you're aquatic, it's the same thing. You're deprived from oxygen as our natural resource. Now, on the space, is that like in the back of your mind or is it in the fore of your mind? I know you're super safety conscious, right? That is everybody's primary goal. Is everybody that on edge when you're up there? I mean, is it?
I don't know. I can't speak for everybody else, but as the Emergency Operations Center Director 2 years prior to becoming an astronaut, you know, I was in an environment where we had to worry about stuff like that. Hurricanes, bombs, terrorists, fires, medical emergencies, all that stuff. But when I became an astronaut, I worked very hard to do the right thing. When I was in space, I didn't have that fear factor in the front of my brain or even in the back of my brain. It was there, but it was suppressed just because I was always focused on doing the job to the best of my ability. I really don't know how I would have reacted if we'd have had a serious emergency. You know how hard my pucker factor would have jumped to, you know, 10 to the 23rd power or something. Who knows? But we had early in my first week in space, we had a situation where all 6 of the Russian command and control computers went down. They just died, right? Wow. And so rather than think, oh, my God, I thought, oh, crap, I'm going to have to go home already. I just got here. Man, I trained for 3.5 years, and you're going to take me home after a week? That's crap. But fortunately, the Russians, Fyodor Yurchikhin and Oleg Kotov, they were engineers, and they were electricians, and they went behind the panel. They cut the cord to the box that was fried. Rewired it,
man.
Up came the computers, and I was good to go. So, you know, that was a great example. And then shortly thereafter, we had a fire alarm go off, which typically happens in space because somebody opens a panel and dust gets in front of the detector, and that's what it thinks is smoke, right? So we had one of those scenarios, and one of my colleagues went and purposely pulled a Russian fire extinguisher off of its holder, which meant,
that sent a further alarm.
Well, no, not a further alarm, but it started the clock ticking on that extinguisher for its lifetime, right?
Oh, wow.
Once you pull it out, it's triggered, and now it only has like I don't even remember what it is, a 30-day, a 3-month, whatever it is, lifetime, right?
Right.
So pulling that off the wall was premature, and it, you know, caused a small issue, not a big issue.
He was trying to be safe. He was trying to be prepared.
Yeah.
He panicked maybe a little.
Who knows? But that was a situation where we kind of jumped the gun a little bit and didn't necessarily follow our procedure. We kind of let our gut take over. And sometimes you can't do that, right? Sometimes you have to force yourself to stay within the envelope of what you're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
But it's hard to do, right? When something happens and it's unexpected, you whatever it is takes over, and sometimes you do what you're supposed to and sometimes you don't.
Do we have time to do the Galactic Coast Power Hour challenge?
Okay, Mike's gonna disconnect. I'm gonna do play-by-play. Sometimes in the past we do this challenge and then we forget that it's radio. But although this is actually we're on Facebook Live too, so this is streaming video. We also have learned from our mistakes to make sure. Okay, I gotta flip that around. Yeah, we also have learned to work with the cameras and not against them. So, I'm willing to give you.
Okay,
actually, you don't need that.
This is the Galactic
Coast. That's right. All right, so this is the Galactic Coast Challenge. So the goal is to make a goal. There's 6 different methods to do it.
3 chances, 6 methods. Pick your poison.
All right, so
we tell you the rules.
The methods are now one of these. Hey, Mike, just heads up. One of these methods will require you to retrieve a paddle from the office. But
absolutely. So
the methods are pints and paddles, beer pong bounce, from mouth to cup, behind the back, hacky stack style, or free throw. Now and I can describe those if you want to further.
Self-descriptive.
Except for the pints and paddles, that might be a little confusing.
I'll try beer pong bounce.
That's actually, man. See,
That's
you
pretty-
you
that's
talk
pretty
about how
popular,
you didn't
beer
go to
pong bounce.
MIT and all, but you actually, you're cutting yourself short sometimes.
My grades were too good for MIT. Just kidding.
Well, I graduated in the top half of the bottom quarter of my graduating class, so I understand. Although since later I was honored by CCI, Steve. All right, I don't know why I put that in there.
Okay, in this challenge, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to stand just with your right shoulder to the side of that camera,
Okay.
bounce the ping pong on the table over your book, The Ordinary Astronaut,
From boyhood dreams to astronaut.
into
The cup.
the cup. That is
Available
correct, sir.
on Amazon,
You can now, by
anywhere
any
where
means,
awesome books are sold.
until the ping pong hits the floor, it's legal. If it bounces 14 times and makes it in the cup, you're good.
Okay.
You have 3 tries. You have 3 ping pongs.
Balls.
Ping pong balls in your hand.
Okay. So I go off. I'm going off.
Yeah, so
Challenge
you
lies
can go,
with
yeah,
you.
you can put down the headphones. Okay.
The table is your edge.
Okay. Are you ready for me to try?
We are ready.
We are ready.
All right. Oh!
That was a big O.
Oh!
All right. So I'm going to try a new strategy.
Oh! Okay, one more.
One more. Una
One
mas.
more. Oh! Oh, we are sorry.
Oh!
Number 6.
That's okay. No worries.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to feed it to you. Oh, we are sorry, Clayton. You did not win a spot in our quarterfinals.
Although we
We don't even know where they're held.
Yeah. Although we are looking for a referee.
We are looking for a referee.
You can't afford me.
That's probably true. That's as you look around, you already know the answer to that question. But hey, no, seriously, really appreciate having you on the show.
Thanks
Enjoyed
for having
that.
me, guys.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
absolutely.
Thank you, Clayton. It was a lot of fun, sir.
So we're talking about A's for Astronaut, blasting through the alphabet, available in fine bookstores and on Amazon or anywhere else. We're not picking favorites. And The Ordinary Spaceman, from boyhood dreams to astronaut, and there is nothing ordinary about this spaceman. Clayton Anderson, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thanks, guys.
Man, really honored to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
Space travel. Beer. Does this look infected? Beer. Boating. Did we mention there's beer? Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, we think. Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Galactic Coast Power Hour. Final Draft Radio. I gotta pee.